Welcome everyone to this week's potentialization. So just a reminder that this session is being recorded, and if you'd like to look at any of our previous potentialization videos on a variety of topics, please go to our YouTube channel and subscribe to our channel as well. And this talk will also be uploaded to the YouTube channel. So we'll be doing the talk and then Q&A afterwards. Talk will take about half an hour, 40 minutes. I hope it's really insightful, and then questions afterwards. Please feel free to put any questions in the chat box, and we'll ask the questions after the talk. So our guest this week is Steve Preston. Hi, Steve.
Hi, Phil. Thanks for inviting me.
Thank you very much for joining us. And the title of the talk this week is it time to rethink your career and life due to the pandemic? That is a really big topic, and one that we know a number of people are thinking about. So thank you very much for joining us this week, Steve. Do you just want to perhaps just explain a little bit about your background and a bit about yourself so everyone's aware?
Yeah, short story. I had a very good senior management career in the travel industry, but moved out of travel side of things into all sorts of different aspects of the company, in sales, operations, HR, project management, you name it. Company moved up north, and I took redundancy, and I went on a voyage of self-discovery, which was very challenging. I learned lots. I learned a lot about how not to support people through career transition. That was one of the first things I learned. And I ended up on a government-funded program when they used to throw money at such things to support out-of-work professionals and executives. And the short story is, I love the program, although I felt it could be improved. And I gained new passions for career and personal development. And on sharing my feedback to the MD of the company who was running that course, what happened was a domino effect of things I would have never expected in a million years, because I suggested that they change the tone of the course, make it more coaching and facilitating rather than telling, because that's how it was. Anyway, cut a long story short, it was all taken on board. Before I knew it, I helped them completely rewrite the whole career and personal development course, became one of their trainers, career coaches, and then eventually their lead trainer and career coach, and mentored others to do the same. So from being out of work and going on that course, all of a sudden I created a new career. And I set up my own business at that time as well. And then basically I was doing work under my own company and then work for them. I let go of the work for the other company, and then, started doing it all under my own company brand. And then people said, "You've got to write a book, Steve. You're very knowledgeable about all this stuff. You've got to get it out there." And 3 books later, now an internationally acclaimed author as well, and a speaker. And 2 of the 3 books have now also been repurposed into breakthrough online programs. And the 3rd book, Portfolio Careers, that will follow suit later this year. So my journey was very unusual, but what it does prove above all else is that you never know what lies ahead, and you have to be open to opportunity. I could have, at the outset, when the managing director was asking for feedback on that course, I could have just said, "Yeah, fine, everything's hunky-dory," and we could have parted our ways, and I would never have gone down this route.
Fascinating, absolutely fascinating. And it's kind of like it's something that you've kind of created it yourself, really, haven't you? you know, you were being authentic, you were going, right, okay, how can this be improved? And it's really led you on this journey, and all the service that's being delivered and stuff. And the fact that it's in books and courses as well, so you can digest it in a number of different ways.
Yeah,
So
absolutely. And
yeah,
as you know, Phil, as part of that journey, I created a unique 6-step process, which I
yeah,
call my career navigation cycle. And that's at the heart of the books and all the coaching work that I do. But again, that would have never happened
yeah,
if I hadn't have gone on that course and actually then taken the opportunity to feedback how I felt about it, like you say, being authentic, and then it all been taken on board, and then one thing, literally domino effect.
brilliant. And it's kind of like, if you can support people through career change, either their own choice or being made redundant or moving into portfolio careers, all of this kind of thing, this is kind of particularly relevant at the moment, with everything that's happening. And certainly, you know, through the pandemic, people are reevaluating their careers, or perhaps they've been in the unfortunate situation where they're out of work or being made redundant. So how do you think, you know, the pandemic has impacted people's thoughts on work?
Well, I think it's been a huge impact, Phil. I mean, there's been loads of stuff across social media, LinkedIn in particular, about people from all walks of life they've had time to rethink their careers, to consider what is actually important to them, and the consistent things that come out on all of these posts are more meaning, more fulfillment, and more work-life balance, or what I call, as you know, Phil, a blended working lifestyle. Because you tell me somebody who's actually got their whole work and life in balance, because it never works.
Yeah,
It's literally creating that blended working lifestyle of your choice. And the home working scenario, I mean, basically what's happened is the pace of change has been accelerated by about 10 years.
yeah,
So you've got companies and organizations who said, thou shalt not work from home, thou shalt not work remotely, who
yeah,
basically had to eat humble pie. And
yeah,
I even had a client who started working with me because he was so hacked off with his daily commute, which was minimum an hour and a half each way on the M25, across the Heathrow stretch, going away from Heathrow, anything up to 2.5 hours each way. And he wanted to work remotely, and he was told, no, can't do that. Pandemic comes, and guess what happens? They've
yeah,
done completely the opposite. They've actually closed down their offices, and now everyone has to work from home. They got no choice. So
yeah,
he's not actually now considering leaving that company at the moment. He's
mm,
going to hang on and see what happens. But people are demanding more flexibility, um, and they want to have more time to spend with you know, their families and friends, and so on. You know, I think people are now challenging, you know, the craziness of these 10, 12 hour or more days that so many people in the corporate world have been used to working.
yeah. Seems it does seem a little bit odd, you know, when I think, oh, it used to be that used to be the norm as well, particularly around London, where travelling around London can take quite a long time on the underground and transport and stuff, easily an hour each way to get into an office. And now everybody's working remotely, which means that, you know, you don't have the stress of the commute and everything. And then, like you say, you can hopefully have a better balanced blended working lifestyle, which enables you kind of to be more in alignment with your values, I guess, doesn't it? And enables you to, you know, deliver more fulfilling service.
Yeah, and I think values are a key thing that also has come out of this pandemic. And in terms of career values, basically, in essence, it's what's important to you in your career and life, and why. and why is the key thing. It's the driver, the call to action. So a lot of people have been thinking about their why, if you like.
Yeah.
And again, what comes out of that is probably stuff that they've never looked at before. They never thought about these things before. And
Yeah.
it's the old adage, isn't it? You know, the busier you are, you just carry on carrying on, and you don't stop to press the pause button. I think that's another key thing that's happened during the pandemic, regardless of whether people have been furloughed or not. They've been it's necessity for them to press the pause button, but a lot of people have basically pressed the pause button and thought, hang on a minute, why
Yeah.
am I doing this?
Yeah.
You know, and what it says on my t-shirt, you know, maybe I need to start thinking about doing what I love.
Yeah, love that t-shirt, love that t-shirt. And you're so right. I mean, you know, as you know, that's one of the things that I've done is press the pause button and actually say, you know, what is it that I want to do? What are the next steps? And I'd actually say, you know, a lot of people, certainly in my case as well, you don't actually know what your values are. I certainly, in my case, I just kind of became out of alignment, if that makes sense. But I didn't know what my values were to be able to get back into alignment. So knowing your values is so important.
I mean, you're right, Phil. Most people don't. I mean, they're just scratching the surface. But as you know, there's a big exercise that I do where people can really get to grips with that.
Yeah.
And it's a big thing, because your values basically are the foundation to build a fulfilling career from. And if you don't know what your values are, or if you're, as you say, out of alignment with your values, then the foundations come crashing down.
Yeah, that's it. So would you say that you know, is knowing your values is absolutely key? Are there any other secrets to making a successful career change?
Well, I think the key things to making a successful career change, number one is mindset, and that's potentially anything up to 80% of making a successful career change. And number two, it's taking positive action and following a proven process. And if you couple mindset and taking positive action following the proven process, then you should hit the jackpot. And, you know, you could argue about the percentages, but if you don't have the right mindset, nothing else is going to happen, is it?
Yeah.
So, you know, although I might say mindset is 80% of success and 20% is taking positive action following proven processes and strategies, you know, say you can argue about those percentages, but the reality is, if your mindset is that I'm never going to make a career change, then, you know, it's the Henry Ford quote, whether you think you can or you can't, you're right. And if your mindset is closed to the fact that I'm never going to be able to change career, then it's not going to happen unless you shift that mindset. And that usually needs some career coaching or some personal development work to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I guess, you know, obviously people's career is a really significant part of their life. And like we were saying, work and life are so interlinked at the moment. And it must take time really to make a successful career change. You don't just want to press the eject button, because you could find yourself jumping out of the frying pan and into the fire and be even more out of alignment. So kind of how long does it take to make a successful career change so that you can deliver that service?
Well, I could be really flippant, Phil, and say how long's a piece of string, but I wouldn't do that, would I? So, no, the professional answer is a minimum of 3 months. And I usually say to potential clients or anybody else between 3 and 6 months. But that said, you know, I've worked with clients, so the quickest ever career change that client I worked with was 7 weeks, or just over 7 weeks.
Wow.
From a standing start where they thought the end of the world would come as we know it, because the rug had been pulled from underneath them from a job they've been doing for the best part of 20 years, and it was bolt out the blue. So they weren't expecting it, and they were very bitter about it. But here's the thing, because the interesting thing was when we started work on coaching and going through the 6-step process. Step 1, let go and look forward. My goodness me, they have stuff to let go of. They had, basically one of their biggest gripes was that they wanted to resign, and blow me down, the company had done it to them. Instead, they pulled the rug from underneath them. So, and it's a different mindset, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you go of your own accord, as you know, Phil, it's very different to you being forced out, even though, she got a reasonable payoff, and, she's been there a long time. However, once she admitted, because that's another key thing, you have to be brutally honest with yourself when you go through this journey. Once she admitted that she was unhappy and she was really looking to get out of there anyway, then obviously let go of that and could really start to see things from a different perspective and start to see this transition as an opportunity rather than a threat. And so she changed completely career within, let's call it 2 months, from a standing start. And that's, very unusual, truly remarkable. But she had the skills and the attributes, and once she got her mindset right and everything else sort of fell into place, she had the proven strategies to work with and so on. And then she had the real determination to make it work, not just for her, but also her family as well. So it was a really great result. But most people, I would say 3 to 6 months. And some people plan their career change a year out. They might say, well, look, and it depends on a number of factors, how long they've worked in the company, whether it triggers some sort of additional payment in terms of pension or whatever. So they might be planning ahead all that time, in which case, they got loads of time to work it through. But often it's the longer you've got, the more complacent you get about it. So sometimes being forced into that position actually really makes you work at it that much harder, doesn't it?
Yeah, that's it. It kind of like it forces your hand that way, basically, doesn't it?
Yeah.
But even I'm just thinking that perhaps sometimes you can tell that you're out of alignment, and you might not know what your values are and all of this kind of thing, and you can be delivering better service either in a different job or a different organization or something completely different altogether, but still people don't always make the change. So what would you say is holding most people back from making a career change?
Well, how long have we got? But the short answer is one word beginning with F, and that's fear, or fears.
Yeah.
And it's fear of the unknown, fear of failure, fear of not earning enough. What if it doesn't work? What if I can't, I can't make it work? I can't earn enough. And of course, as a coach, you turn all that around and say, well, yes, I get all of that, but what if you can? How great would that be?
Yeah.
And that's the mindset shift, isn't it?
Yeah.
In my case, when I went through my change, my biggest fear, which seems absolutely ridiculous when I think about it now, was fear of success. Because I was thinking I want to set up a business of my own, but what if it gets out of hand and it becomes too successful too quickly? What am I going to do? How am I going to manage all that? And you look back at that and you think, my God, what a nice problem to have. But people do, they put all these fears in the way. I'm too young, I'm too old, I'm too this, I'm too that. I've only ever done this type of work. You know,
Yeah.
multitude of fears and barriers, if you like. Um,
Yeah, it's fascinating, isn't it? And I know when I went on the journey of moving away from my previous place to doing what I'm doing now, absolutely the fears were there, and I think everybody has them. I think naturally, you know, we've got, is it the amygdala, you know, the oldest part of the brain, and that's like fight, flight, and freeze, and you know, and perhaps we are tuned a bit for fears, but some of them you just think, you know, when you overcome them, you think, what was all that about? Or, you know, overcoming fears is a really, really big step. And then you can step into your power, if you like. And, you know, when you know what your values are, as you were saying with that exercise for discovering values, it can make things so much more fulfilling.
Absolutely. And it's all about what I call turning fear into focus.
Yeah,
And probably, well, 80-20 rule of thumb again, as most things are, aren't they? Pareto principle. But probably
yeah,
80% of most people's fears are perception rather than reality.
yeah,
You know, who's to say that you can't earn enough? Who's to say it's not going to work? Who's to say you're too old, you're too young, you're too this, too that? You know, again, it's mindset. Whether you think you
yeah,
can or you can't, you're right. And it's reframing those fears into a focused way, so that all of a sudden people then think, right, okay, yeah, they are perception. I can let go of those, move forward, and build momentum and move forward from there. I mean, I've worked with a lot of people, a lot of clients over the years whose big fear was they wouldn't survive without the corporate umbrella around them. You
wow,
know,
yeah,
they worked at a very high level, and I'm talking people right up to VP level in large PLCs, and you think, well, you've got some fantastic skills and attributes and knowledge and all these different things. The fact you haven't got the corporate umbrella around you anymore, well, you're still the same person.
yeah,
And people, you know, saying people buy people as such.
yeah,
It's all about being able to market yourself in the right way. And of course, that's a fear for a lot of people as well.
yeah,
How am I going to market myself if I'm running a business of my own? You know, will people want to pay me? I mean, if I've heard that once, I've heard it hundreds of times. And my
yeah,
answer is always the same. Well, they paid you when you were employed,
yeah.
so why would they not want to pay you when you're self-employed or you're running your own business? It's just a different way of looking at it, different mindset.
Yeah, mindset keeps coming back, doesn't it?
Yep.
It's so important, so important. Um, and yeah, I mean, there's also, like, at the moment, you know, a lot of people facing redundancy, as we previously mentioned. But when you're facing redundancy, it's important to do things in the right way, so that you can put yourself in the best possible position for your next career move. And what would you say is the biggest mistake that people make when they're facing redundancy?
Yeah, it's a great question, Phil, but I'm going to cheat with the answer
Ah,
because I'm going to give you three.
okay.
But they're all interrelated, really. Number one is the dreaded scattergun.
Yeah,
And most people inadvertently, and they may not know any different, so they're firing out their CV into cyberspace, left, right, and center. It's untargeted, it's unfocused. They haven't thought about what they're really going to be doing yet. They haven't thought about what I would call their true marketability, which is who they are and what they got to offer an employer. So it's basically firing it into a void, into cyberspace. And of course, then what happens? Well, maybe nothing. And then people get ever frustrated because they don't get any response to their CV. And that, why are they doing this? Well, because the initial um, fight and flight response, if you like, is I must get another job.
yeah,
So again, we said before about instead of pressing the pause, press the reset button, it's boom, must get another job without really thinking it through. So that is the second point. Definitely, I appreciate everyone's financial situations are different. Some people don't have a lot of time to be able to do that, so they do need to get things moving quickly. But even still, they still need to work through some of these key things so they can market themselves effectively.
Yeah.
And so the second thing is press the pause button to reevaluate. The third thing is don't spend days, hours, weeks on the internet.
Yeah.
Trawling through job boards, recruitment boards, and all this sort of stuff, because what you're doing there is you're putting yourself in amongst all the hundreds, if not thousands, of people now who are going to be your competition. And often the jobs don't exist. And often it's a way for recruiters to get people into the net. And what can be more frustrating than applying for jobs that you think, oh, that sounds good, and it doesn't even exist. Or if it does, you haven't got a hope in heaven of getting it because there's already 500 people ahead of you in the queue. So when people understand the key strategies and they understand the best way to find new jobs, especially if they're going to change career. I mean, if you're going to change career, it's extremely unlikely you're going to get a job secured from a job board, from a recruiter. It's going to be through networking, through talking to people, through developing relationships, and from people who know you championing your cause, saying, oh, this guy, Phil, he's a really good guy. I think you need to have a chat with him because he might be able to really add value to your company or organization, blah, blah, blah. It's that type of approach. But again, a lot of people are very reluctant to put themselves out there. But the reality is that's the way of the world now. You have to be doing that. And you have to have a strong online brand, especially on LinkedIn, so you can be found and you can find others. And you can then really start to proactively manage your career change and transition. So you're taking control of it. I think too many people who've been used to changing jobs in the past rather than changing careers might just expect a recruiter to do all the work for them. Well, that's not going to happen if you're changing careers. In fact, they won't want to know you at all.
Yeah, it's about kind of taking ownership and responsibility of your new direction, really, isn't it? And doing the spade work yourself.
Yeah, it's what I call becoming the architect of your own future.
Brilliant. So let's suppose somebody is perhaps making some of these mistakes. So they're doing the scattergun approach and they're spending a lot of time on the internet searching through things. Is there a point in which people should question their job search strategy? To really question how it's going.
Yeah, again, it's a great question, Phil. I believe so. Yes, it's my belief that what is the point of trying to push water uphill? That's a polite version of it, anyway. I've been there when I went through my transition. You get to the point where you think, well, hang on a minute, why am I doing this? But during the pandemic, it's just multiplied manyfold. I've had people contact me who I was absolutely astounded for almost boasted that they'd applied for between 400 to 500 jobs.
Wow.
Yeah.
God.
And I'm thinking, well, how do I sort of gently try change their mindset around this and think, well, yeah, okay, I admire your persistence, and persistence pays. I believe that. However, is your persistence targeted in the right way? If you've applied for 400 to 500 jobs, and in fact, from that, they only got 3 interviews, right?
Yeah.
So you're thinking, well, that must be telling you something for starters. And then they didn't get any of those. They got down to the final 2, I think, on 1. And of course, they were gutted then when they didn't get that.
Yeah.
But surely you have to start questioning and say, okay, well, what, how else could I be spending this time? I mean, 400 to 500 job applications. A job application nowadays, especially if it's an online one, I mean, it takes forever. You might be able to save bits as you go along and stop and pause and then do more. But my goodness me, how soul destroying is that? Would it not be better to actually take a step back and say, hang on a minute, do I still want to do this type of work?
Yeah.
Maybe it's now time to change. Maybe somebody's trying to tell me something here, that it's time to change. But again, why do people not do that and just carry on regardless?
Yeah.
Back to fear, isn't it? And staying in their comfort zone.
I was just going to say, staying with what's familiar to them and what they know, and perhaps they think, that they're.
But if you can imagine the damage to their mental health.
I know, yeah.
500 rejections. I mean, I just can't get my head around that at all. So, I don't know at what point in terms of the number of applications, but I think in terms of a time scale as well, you have to set yourself a realistic time scale. And, it was always the sort of psychological 6-month barrier for people who've been out of work. If you haven't been able to find a new job within 6 months, then, as far as the job centre were concerned, then all of a sudden you've joined the difficult brigade, and either they just dumped you completely and let you get on with it, or if you were lucky, they gave you some additional support. Obviously, the pandemic has made things harder, so you could argue that 6-month period maybe has been extended. But even so, why wait 6 months? If you put in so many applications, all that time and effort and energy and turmoil, frustration, angst, and everything else, stress, I would seriously be saying to people, pause, rethink, regroup, and let's look at doing something completely different. And what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah, it's like compared to
you're not earning anything now.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest problem with a lot of people. They don't think about it that way. That's exactly how that was the catalyst for me in my transition, when my dear old mum said to me, when I said I'm thinking about starting a business, and she said, well, what's the worst that could happen?
Yeah.
And I was completely dumbfounded. And I said, well, I suppose I'll give it 6 months. If it doesn't work, then I'll try and find another job.
Yeah.
But I think people in this pandemic, there's been definitely 2 groups of people. There have been those who just absolutely hell-bent on, I'm going to do more of the same, come what may, whatever it takes. And they've been crushed so many times. Whereas equally, there have been other people, especially in really challenging sectors like travel and entertainment and events, who've had to think more broadly, because those jobs, they're not going to exist anymore. Or if they are, they're going to be way fewer of them in the future. So they've had to think much broader. And a lot of them have made great career changes as a result.
Wonderful. So I guess as well, from what you were saying with the job search strategies is like whenever you're doing any change, it's kind of, I guess, important to perhaps look at it as a bit of a project plan,
Absolutely.
really.
Yeah.
So it's not just keep going unmindfully, if that's a word, you know, doing the same old thing. It's like treat it as a project plan. It's an important thing, obviously, changing career. So it's either X weeks, X application. Keep reviewing it, keep updating, and monitor.
Yeah, absolutely, Phil. And with any successful project, you know, as I'm sure all of you know, you always, as you say, you're always going to review it. What's
Yeah,
working? Okay, carry on doing it. What's not working? Can it? And
yeah,
that's the problem. People don't do that. They don't want to face up to what's not working. So they just carry on regardless. And it might be sometimes it might just need a little tweak. Might just be something that they're doing or saying or not saying, more the point.
yeah,
And one of the key things I say, and that's, I suppose, back to making one of the key secrets for success, is what you say, what you say, how you say it, and to whom.
yeah,
And it's getting that narrative and being confident in being able to talk to people and explain to people that you're looking to change career. You might be interested in a particular type of work or sector or whatever, or starting a business, in which case, go and talk to lots of people who've done it before.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely. It's fascinating. Yeah, and it's like you say, it is who you know and how they know you, isn't it? It's getting your personal brand across so that you can kind of be the best you can be, so you can deliver the best service in whatever move you're going to make next. Wonderful. So I think probably over the years, you know, you've probably seen a lot of different career changes and career moves, and there's going to be people that are completely reevaluating things at the moment, like we mentioned, perhaps people that have been in hospitality, perhaps people like myself that are in IT and wanted a complete change. So you know, have you got an example for people of perhaps a really radical career change that you've helped somebody through, because that might be quite applicable for what people are going through at the moment with the pandemic?
Yeah, yeah. No, great question again, Phil. No, I mean they're many and varied, but I'll give you two, because they're the two I focus on these in my books as well, because they are so unusual. But the first one was a London city trader who their big dream was to become a paramedic, and they were so unhappy, so stressed in their job in the city. It affected their health dramatically, and it got to the point where one day they went to lunch and never came back. Never even went back in the office and said, "I'm leaving." They just walked out. And you're talking about somebody who's on a six-figure base salary with a bonus package, you know, to boot. And they were somebody who coined the phrase, which I'd never heard before, but I absolutely love this: the velvet rut.
Yeah,
And the velvet rut, you know, is all about people who are stuck in this awful conundrum, if you like. And a lot of it is about peer pressure, keeping up with the Joneses. You know, all your mates are there and they're all living the fancy lifestyle, but you absolutely hate it and it's destroying you. So it takes real guts to do something about that. Unfortunately, a lot of people don't, and that results in severe depression and mental health issues and so on. I had a call from a HR director a few years ago who was at the bottom of that spiral. He was in a really bad way, but he just would not let go still. And he suffered for years. He just wouldn't come out of the comfort zone. Really, really sad, because he had all the trappings and everything else. So that velvet rut is not a nice place to be.
no,
And they had to go through a tremendous amount of personal sacrifices in order to achieve their goal of becoming a paramedic. They had some eyesight problems, which apparently preclude you. So they had to have laser eye treatment, all sorts of stuff. Anyway, you know, it's back to whether you think you can or can't. You're right. You know, she wanted to do it, eventually got there, and achieved the dream. And it's actually sort of spun on to, she's now doing the, not the paramedic bit, but the bit where the paramedics then hand over to the first line in accident and emergency in the hospital, whatever they call those people. She's been doing that for a number of years.
Wonderful.
And then the other one was a pharmaceutical representative. Now, talk about values out of alignment. I mean, this woman was passionate about the natural world, about wildlife conservation, and so many things that are so anti the pharmaceutical world. Yeah. Why was she doing it? Again, peer pressure. Her friends went into that line of work. She followed them. Her friend said, why don't you come and work for this company? She followed them until it got to the point, again, of no return, pressure cooker.
Yeah.
And it was fascinating because when we worked together, she came to the realization that she'd never, and this is somebody, you know, well in their 30s by this time, she'd never ever made a career decision herself. All of her career decisions were made for her by family or peers, you know.
Oh,
and it's only when she then, like you said earlier, Phil, took back control,
yeah,
said, right, okay, went through this process, and she started doing some volunteering at a wildlife park down in Kent, which was a great strategy. You know, will I like this? And absolutely loved it. And then she's basically sold her house and up sticks and went to Africa to live the dream.
wow.
And she was out there on various projects for a number of years, but she came back and she's now doing various projects in terms of, I think she's working with children, helping them understand the environment better.
Oh, amazing.
Yeah. So what a transformation.
Completely. And what's fascinating about those is in both cases, be it in banking or pharmaceuticals, or they both had what I would probably call very highly, like, externally validated jobs. They were the kind of jobs where you say, you know, you just almost say a job title and it's kind of perhaps got some kudos to it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Stuff.
Yeah.
But not very internally fulfilling by the sounds of it. And it's that internal fulfillment, or your unique set of values, and that ultimately has to come through. And then the service that they were providing, either in the, you know, with the frontline health staff, or in terms of, you know, everything with the animals, and then going to Africa and teaching children and stuff like that, completely in alignment with their values, authentic service, and that is just so much more fulfilling. And then it's probably so much better for their health and everything that goes with it as well, because they've got that blend more in alignment.
Totally, absolutely right, Phil. But in order to do that, in both cases, they had to go through the voyage of self-discovery. They had to understand more about themselves, you know, what's important to them, their career and life, and why, and who they are, what they have to offer, and what I call their true marketability.
Yeah.
And it's remarkable because in both those cases, as is often the way, as you well know, Phil, most people cannot see the wood for the trees. They have very little understanding of their skills, their attributes, and their marketability in general, their strengths and achievements, and so on. And once you start tapping into that and really unlocking it, that's when you really can then start to unlock people's potential, and all of a sudden it's a whole new world of possibility and opportunity.
Wonderful. Brilliant, brilliant. Well, thank you so much, Steve. That was really, really insightful and
Thank you.
really, really interesting, fascinating. So I'm going to open it up now to the audience. So has anybody got any questions they would like to ask Steve?
I'm just going to say we haven't got anybody just yet, but if anybody wants to drop anything in the chat or come off mute. But I'm dying to say something which is kind of part question and part just what we're up to with the system as well. Because of course, some people will be watching live, but over time, a lot more people will watch this in the future. And what we want to do with the potentialization platform is have through various tests, surveys and things, get to understand themselves a little bit better. And one of the things it might do is say, you're not a natural fit with your job at the moment. Now, there might be very good reasons. They might be wonderful and loving that job, but it might be that they've been getting stressed, and it might be a nudge to go and say, oh, and we might point them at this video. So in the future, hopefully we'll get a lot of people watching the video when it's right for them. So the question along with that is what's the best way to contact you to actually do this? Or should they go and look at your books first? Or what would you say about that? Where does somebody start?
Well, probably the best port of call is the simplest one is to go to my Career Catalyst website, and that's Steve Preston, thecareercatalyst.com, and they'll find my books there, my courses, and everything else. So that's basically all encompassing. But just to take the point that's been made, one of the other things that's suddenly become very prevalent in the media, there is a view that there is going to be an absolute explosion in resignations come the back end of the year. And all of a sudden, and that's going to be a combination of those who've been furloughed, who've just been hanging tight and claiming their money and thinking, well, I'll just wait and see what happens, to those who will have basically got to the point of no return, like we've been talking about already. And, you know, the pressure cooker is boiled over and they've just got to frustration point, especially if their employer starts making demands such as you have to come into the office every day, which they might not want to do now. So unless employers are going to be flexible and have, you know, these sort of hybrid type operations in the future, there's going to be a lot of people out there who are going to vote with their feet. And the view is that there's going to be a lot of professional people who are at that tipping point at the moment. They're just waiting to see what happens next.
I'm really curious what that's going to mean to a job market with lots of people looking to swap. And is that chaos? Is it stressful? Is it good?
Well, I think it depends. I think I'm sure there's going to be loads more people who are going to do stuff in their own right. I'm convinced that there'll be an explosion of portfolio careerists in 2021. I said this at the start of the year. And for those people watching this who don't know what a portfolio career is, in simplistic terms, it's where you earn from multiple income streams. And those multiple income streams could be all self-employed. It could be a mixture of self-employed and employed. You know, there's no absolute on it, but the key ingredient is what I call the 3 Ps, and that's working for passion, pleasure, and profit. And if you're doing work which you're passionate about, and it's all related to your interests and your natural talents, and doing stuff you love, and it gives you great pleasure, and you profit from that in terms of both financial reward, but also personal internal reward, then what could be better than that? And I'm convinced that there are going to be a lot more. I mean, I'm talking a big explosion worldwide of portfolio careerists, and also employers who are going to start to realize that they might have to embrace some of these people, because there is a view which is quite widely held, and I certainly support it, that a lot of work moving forward, even more work, will become project and task based. And if it's a project or a task, then you don't have to employ somebody to do that. You can, or you don't have to employ somebody full time to do that. You can bring people in. They might be on a short term contract employed. They might be freelance, whatever. There's all sorts of permutations around that. But I think there's going to be a big change in how companies and organizations start to view their workforce, and how their manpower plans will look in the future. And that will benefit people who are at the tipping point thinking, I don't want any more of this, but they might have an opportunity to do a bit of work in a large company, doing one thing, do something alongside that in their own right. You know, who knows? Let's say there's no right or wrong. I mean, there's this term, the side hustle, which has emanated, needless to say, from America. And that's where people have got a job and they're doing something alongside it, which doesn't necessarily have to be related to that, can be completely unrelated. But a lot of people with side hustles are just doing that to pay the bills. Whereas a true portfolio careerist is somebody who actually wants to make it work from the collective of stuff they do. And some of that might not actually be paid work, it might be voluntary work.
That's reminding me, because something I've used recently, just a little bit, for a couple of little jobs on the system, is there are various websites out there now where you can actually pay somebody literally for little tasks, might be graphics design or whatever else.
What,
so
like
I guess that works from an employer and if you're wanting to go freelance, kind of.
You mean sites like Fiverr and so on?
Yes, that kind of stuff.
Yeah, yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, they've been building gradually over the last probably, I don't know, 8-9 years or so. But yeah, there's a whole raft of them out there now, and it's dog eat dog on those. The challenge for people who want to work through those sites is it's a bit of a Dutch auction, really, and you could end up doing a lot of work for not a lot of money.
So you wouldn't start there?
Sorry?
You wouldn't start there if you were wanting to put your name out?
Well, some people do though, John, because they think, well, at least that way I'm starting to do stuff in my own right, so I'm starting to get known, and then they come away from doing work for those sort of brands, and they do it in their own right. I did work. I found a fantastic what did you call them? Transcriber through Fiverr a number of years ago, when I had a load of interviews recorded for my portfolio careers book, and it was a massive task to turn those into meaningful documents. And I found this guy on Fiverr or one of those sites, and basically he did an initial bit of work for some silly amount of money as a trial, and then it was evident he was absolutely brilliant, and so we took it out of that, and I used him loads of times. In fact, I recommended him to lots of my contacts as well. So he got a lot of business through me, either work of my own or work of people I knew. And he did all of that directly. And the funny thing was, because he was transcribing all these interviews for my portfolio career book from my people I'd interviewed who got portfolio career stories, he thought, you know what, I rather like the sound of this. I want to do this myself. And unfortunately, he stopped transcribing and started focusing on other things instead.
Yeah, we've got a really quiet audience at the moment, which I think it means that they're all dying to go and look at your website so they can talk to you and find out more and talk to you personally. But another question then, because I could ask questions all day. This is fascinating, this stuff. You talked about values earlier. It might sound like a strange question to some people, but what are values and why might they clash? Or
well, in simplistic terms, John, values are things we hold dear. They are key motivators, drivers, and your values shift as a result of circumstance. I mean, and for instance, your values as a teenager are inevitably going to be very different to values when you're in your 40s and 50s. Things will have moved on. You see the world differently. You've had different experiences, but from a career perspective, where it's so evident is that when people are unhappy in a job or career, invariably it's down to a clash of values. So they might have been aligned with the values of the company or the organization when they originally joined, but as often happens nowadays, they get taken over or they've got new management, new leadership, and all of a sudden all the goalposts move, and it's like, well, this is an alien company to me now, so I don't want to be part of this anymore. But when you get the alignment of values, then it's very, very powerful. And it's a wonderful quote, and as Phil knows, I'm very big into quotes. When who you are aligns with what you do, you will achieve extraordinary results. And it's very true, but it's understanding who you are first. So you've got to do that bit of work first. So understand who you are, and then you need to line that with what you do. And then, yes, you will achieve extraordinary results. But most people don't have that alignment.
given that there's a lot of pressure in the world at the moment, have you got any views on what society or government or whatever ought to be doing in the long term to support more people to be flexible? Obviously, promote you, things like that. But
well, you'd like to think governments or key people key people of influence would lead by example, but unfortunately, it's back to conditioning, isn't it? You know, most people at the top level of organizations and in governments, they don't really understand the portfolio concept. You know, it's about having a job, doing it well, and you know, that's the way it is. But all research currently shows that people from school leaving age now, I mean, it's a massive shift, no longer necessarily want to do the traditional job. You know, so many youngsters now leave college or university, and they view it that they're doing stuff. They like to call it, I'm just doing stuff. But a lot of those youngsters are very entrepreneurial, and what they're really doing is actually creating a portfolio career and working lifestyle of their choice. And from an early age, they are very, very lifestyle focused. So whereas, I mean, the big shift is, whereas it was previously thought that the only people who were really interested in lifestyle were like the over 50s and those in the latter stages of their career, it's become the norm now. You know, most youngsters are incredibly lifestyle focused. It's not just about work. They want more meaning in their work. They want more fulfillment in their work, but they also want to have a fulfilling lifestyle. And it's not just about work. So the key thing is that employers have to change their modus operandum in order to accommodate that. And, you know, a lot of the forward thinking ones like Google and so on, you know, they've been doing this for years, and they got very funky offices where people can do all sorts of weird and wonderful things, go down slides and play games, and it's a fun environment. And their view is that you give people that environment, they will be more creative and more productive. But that's a big shift. That's again mindset. It's a big mindset shift for a lot of employers to view work in that way.
I'm just looking. Derek's come off mute. Did you have a question to ask, Derek?
Yeah, I don't quite know how to formulate it, but I suppose it's essentially how do you find different personality types take to this approach of you know, the 6-step system? Because you have emphasized that you don't sit behind a computer and apply for jobs, or you know, find jobs and then apply for them. You have to go out and start networking and things. But obviously that's something that plays to the strengths of an extrovert, for example, rather than an introvert. You know, and
well, yes and no. Can I bust that myth, Derek?
yeah.
And I'm going to give you, it's very close to home example, but I'm going to give you the example of our son. I'm very proud of him. Now, he up sticks and went out to Canada on a 2-year working visa, pre-COVID. And from a standing start, only knowing one person, he networked his way, and he's a total introvert, I hasten to add. Very laid back, very introverted. From a standing start, he's a freelance sound engineer. He got work in 7 different venues over a very short period of time. And it was all going well until COVID happened, and then bang, of course, everything shut. Okay, so he wasn't just going to sit on his laurels. So what did he do? He then started networking with various people he'd come into contact with, and in a small bubble that he was in. And he just asking the question, well, I'll pretty much do anything at the moment because I just want some cash coming in. And as a result of that, he's done dog walking, security work on a film set, and now he's doing a lot of work in a brewery, mixture of canning, bottling, cask washing, you name it. Every single piece of work has come as a result of networking. And if you met our son, you would think he's the last person in the world who's going to be out there networking. But he can't, you know, obviously he hears it all the time from me, but you know, it's even harder probably with your kids, isn't it? He's not a natural networker, but he knew he just had to put himself out there, both online and offline. And he joined a Brits in Vancouver Facebook group or something, and they're all encouraging each other and so on. But a lot of these were face-to-face meetings through people who recommended and so on. So I don't necessarily subscribe to that. Sometimes people who are very extrovert can be quite arrogant in their networking pursuits, and that can have a negative impact. I don't think you have to be a certain personality type, Derek. I think it's back to mindset again. And again, it's what you say, how you say it, and to whom. So if you work at saying the right things to the right people in the right way, then you'll get the results. First of all, it's not easy. You have to really work at this. I supported a top executive through a nasty redundancy and transition a few years ago, and he made fantastic progress. And the biggest, and he loved this 6-step process and the voyage of self-discovery, his biggest challenge, and he kept going on about it, was his narrative. And that was all about getting clarity of purpose. And it's, what do you say when you meet people at a networking event or you bump into them and so on? You know, what do you say? But that's all about getting clarity in your own mind first. Once you've got that clarity of what it is you want to do, and it's back to the why again, why being the driver, the call to action. Once you understand your big why, then that narrative will start to come, as it did with him. And he's gone on to become quite a successful interim manager.
I see.
You know, so something sort of along similar lines with that as well was what I actually found was back when I was doing software testing and we were selling software testing services. I found myself more of an introvert because I kind of, like, in my heart of hearts didn't believe in what I was selling and everything, and it was out of alignment with my values and stuff. But then once I've kind of tried to, well, I have realigned myself with my values and what services I'm delivering, I find it just so much easier to authentically talk to people, and I find that, you know, don't have to try and shout from the rooftops as much. And I find people are coming to me, and I just find, like, so many doors are opening at the moment you just wouldn't believe. And I would actually say that I'm quite introvert, if that makes sense. Naturally, I'm not really, but I just feel like so much stuff is happening at the moment, and it's absolutely brilliant. So I wonder if like, you know, having that solid foundation of knowing what your values are, kind of like, I guess almost as Steve was saying, with the mindset, knowing what your values are, and then I guess taking that action if it's all in alignment, kind of works quite well. That's what I'm.
Yeah, and when I think back to myself when I was in my transition, it was interesting. The MD of the consultancy that was running the program I was on, I always remember she called me the reluctant networker. And that really wound me up. But she was right, because at that time, I was a bit reluctant. But why was I reluctant? I was reluctant because, again, I hadn't got clarity at that point. I hadn't got clarity of what I wanted to do and why. Once it became blindingly clear, blindingly obvious to me that basically career and personal development was the way forward, and that was, you know, these were new passions of mine, then I could start to talk to people about it, you know, as you're doing now, Phil, and people get it.
Yeah.
And I think that's half the battle, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, it's yeah, networking is a skill. Don't get me wrong, Derek. It is a real skill, but it's not about personality types at all. It's really about, I think, you know, Phil's word that he uses a lot. It's about being authentic, and people recognise authenticity. You know, they don't want BS. They want to talk to people who really believe in what they do for the right reasons and want to do things for the right reasons.
So what do you do then if you, I mean, my experience of networking events is often people turn up and they, you know, the first question they ask you is what's your name, and the second question they ask you is what do you do, you know, and lots of people have an easy answer to that. You know, I'm an accountant, or I'm a lawyer that specializes in intellectual property rights, or whatever. If you're somebody like me who's extremely adaptable, and my attitude to work is, well, what's your problem? I'll fix it for you. You know, how do you put a name on that kind of role? If almost like,
why do you need to? You've just given a beautiful intro into.
Yeah, brilliant.
I love that.
Yeah.
What's your problem? I fix it. That's what I do. You know, and I think this is you've actually touched on something here, Derek, which is really, really important, and I think is where the majority of people fall foul. Is they're trying to be too precise. They're trying to be too clever. And if you actually almost turn it into a story, then it becomes far more interesting for starters, and it's much more believable. Well, basically, what's your problem? I can fix it. And then you can give some examples. An example of what I done, you know, Joe blogs down whatever. He had a problem with X, Y, Z. Well, he didn't know how to solve it. So he called me in, and, you know, the result was blah, blah, blah.
I think it's because in organizations, you know, that I've worked in for some time, you get a reputation of being the troubleshooter. So you don't have to explain what you do. People have a problem like, oh, this process is going wrong, or, you know, we've got this situation that needs organizing or whatever. Derek will do it, you know, he's the guy to do it. Whereas then trying to explain what it is you do, because basically what you've got is, you know, exceptional organizational skills, planning, foresight, you know,
Well, you see,
all those things.
yeah, but what you're describing there, Derek, and again, if I had £1,000 for every person who said this to me, well, it's really difficult because I'm a generalist. I'm not a specialist. Well, so what? If you're a good generalist, then great, because you've got a wide-ranging skill set. You can do loads of stuff that a lot of people can't do. And, you know, that's how you can start to, you know, spin the narrative, if you like. But the reality is that people need problem solvers. And if you're the guy who can solve problems, Derek, you'll be in demand. But it's how you position that, and especially on your LinkedIn profile, and how you tell your story around that, that's going to make the difference. And this is one of the reasons why so many people have struggled during this pandemic, when they just focused on the one job mentality, one job type of application, because I'm an X, I'm a financial controller. Well, you're not a financial controller. You're a person who's got skills and attributes and knowledge and achievements and a whole plethora of stuff going on. All the while you focus on job title as opposed to who you are and what you have to offer, which is what I call your true marketability, you're going to be stifled. So it's really more being able to put into play to explain to people that side of things, you know, what value you can add. I worked with a guy a number of years ago who was absolutely paranoid about going from contract to interim contract to interim contract. And this guy had passions for sailing and all sorts of stuff. And he said, well, you know, the thing is, I'm not going to be able to do what I love until I retire. And I said, well, what makes you say that? And he said, well, because, you know, as soon as I finish this contract, I want to go on to another one, blah, blah. I said, well, yeah, but what is the reason you're doing that? You know, what's to say you can't have a break in between and go off sailing for a month or so? How good would that be? And it was so funny because he looked at me like I'd come from Mars. And he said, well, you've got a point there. And again, tunnel vision, it's back to the just constantly doing, and thinking that he had to constantly have another interim project lined up before he finished the next one. And he flipped it as a result of the work we did together. And he started doing interim stuff. And then he'd say to them, well, look, I just, you know, I'm going to tell you now, but I'm taking 2 months off at the end of this. So if you want to extend the contract, you know, we'll have to have a look at that. But at the moment, that's going to prove problematic. And all this fear about, you know, constantly earning from another, it went out the window because he was enjoying himself so much, it didn't matter.
Wonderful, wonderful.
And also, it was remarkable how because he made himself less available,
he was more in demand.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's brilliant when you hear nice things about people creating a blended working lifestyle like that. But thank you very much, Steve. It's been absolutely fantastic, very, very inspiring and very insightful. Can you just remind us so people can get in touch with you on LinkedIn and your website?
Yeah, Steve Preston, that's Preston, thecareercatalyst.com.
Wonderful. And thank you very much for joining us today.
No, thank you for inviting me.
Brilliant. It's been great. And yeah, so thank you very much to the audience and the questions as well. And we'll have our next potentialization meeting next Wednesday night. So yeah, we'll close it off now by saying thank you very much, everyone. Absolutely brilliant, Steve. Very insightful, and I'm sure everybody's gained a lot. And we'll see everyone soon.